Alyssa Thomas appears to be on her way to Phoenix. We've got fresh reporting on who might be going back to Connecticut in return. Special emergency podcast Locked on Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Are we having fun yet? Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. The great Alexa Philippou of ESPN has reported that Alyssa Thomas is on her way from the Connecticut Sun to the Phoenix Mercury. I am here with fresh report and buzz around the league about the potential return for Alyssa Thomas. Going to be really interesting. We're going to get right to it, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the how and the why. What are we hearing? Multiple league sources telling the Next and Locked On Women's Basketball that Natasha Cloud, Rebecca Allen, and what would be the 12th overall pick in the draft would be heading to Connecticut in exchange for Alyssa Thomas, Ty Harris, in what was a necessary sign and trade because the Sun cored Alyssa Thomas, meaning ultimately trade had to happen. AT had been an unrestricted free agent, also means significantly AT had to approve where she was going. Our own Gabby Appleby caught up with AT, who was talking about the fact that she wanted to go somewhere where the experience was exceptional, where it felt more like unrivaled. And Phoenix certainly has done a lot of investing in practice facility, in overall experience. You can understand why from that fit it makes sense. We're going to get into a little more of what we know and what we're still to find out. Of course, the trade will not be official until February 1st because of the rules of WNBA free agency. So we'll be in a hurry up and wait scenario, but obviously teams operate in this way. They're able to make plans based on what has been set, not in stone, but has been set and agreed to already. So let's talk a little bit more about the return. Natasha Cloud going to Connecticut, that is fascinating in and of itself. As we know, Natasha Cloud signed with Phoenix. The idea was that Cloud was going to get a chance to be a shooter, and she was going to get the chance to lead an offense. Ultimately, that only, if this is what the deal ends up being, lasts 1 year. Natasha Cloud shot 39.7% from the field in 2024 with Phoenix. The three-point percentage, again, hovers right around 30. She's at 30.8. So, Natasha Cloud is, and let's just be clear about this, a point guard who was able to lead a team to a championship. We saw her do it in DC. But in the Nate Tibbetts offense, it's a little bit of an imperfect fit. Now, fascinatingly, obviously they're very different sizes, but in many ways, Alyssa Thomas is essentially coming in to assume the point guard duties. And I say that as, she is the only person who plays like Alyssa Thomas is Alyssa Thomas. And so she is a point forward, but even that kind of understates it. That still makes it sound like effectively she's a secondary or tertiary distributor. That isn't what she's been in Connecticut. That's not the role that Kurt Miller kind of helped her develop into. And you also have the very real issue that if you are looking to play 5 out, as Phoenix did for much of this past season, and is hell-bent on doing so in 2025, that is part of why Brittany Griner is on the free agent market as we speak. Alyssa Thomas is just not a perimeter shooter. She is just not. And so, okay, fine. As one league source put it to me, that's a top 5 player in the league. You fit around Alyssa Thomas. Look, that's what Connecticut did for many years. But if you're going to play 4 out, you're going to need to surround her with shooters. So you cannot have a pass-first point guard next to Alyssa Thomas. You're going to have 4 other people on the floor who shoot the three at 35 or better percent, and frankly, probably 40%, especially in a league where we are with people like Lynn Roberts, Carl Smesko joining, the innovative coaching that we already saw from Sandy Brundello and Cheryl Reeve this past year. Not coincidentally, the two WNBA finalists. So back to talk a little bit more about it. There's some secondary pieces here. I heard another league source say to me, wow, that sounds a little light. So again, it's not official, but that's what I'm hearing. Talk a little bit more about it. Be back with you in a second. I'm Howard Megdal. You are listening to a special bonus edition of Locked On Women's Basketball. But first, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And Super Bowl 59 is here. It's football. So it's not basketball. If they dribble, it doesn't work because the ball is oblong. So it's a different thing. It's fine. Watch it Sunday night in a couple of weeks in between women's basketball games. Yeah, give it a shot. Apparently there's some commercials. Maybe there'll be hopefully some commercials for the WNBA or Juju Watkins. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. That's the Super Bowl. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. You can even do your WNBA futures betting while you are watching the game. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Again, bet $5, you win, score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Howard Megdal here, back with an emergency podcast episode of Locked On Women's Basketball. There are some elements of this, and again, it's just the beginning, right? So this is the deal that's being talked about by multiple league sources. It is by definition not a done deal yet, but boy, the idea of sending Rebecca Allen to a place where she could score regularly in Connecticut's going to need to find some people to score is something very encouraging. The other part of this, the idea that Ty Harris would also be coming. Well, I've talked about this. We've even had her on the show. Ty Harris is a player who I have a ton of respect for. And she happens to be somebody who is extremely helpful from a perspective of what Phoenix will need. Ty Harris shot 39.5% from three on almost 4 attempts in 2024. She was at 46.4 coming off the bench in 2023. Again, this goes to the other part of the equation that we were talking about. If you're going to play a Nate Tibbetts style offense and you're going to have Alyssa Thomas on the floor, you need a point guard like Ty Harris, somebody who is capable of knocking down the threes. You just, and they'll tell you this, if you talk to coaches across the league, you can't play with 3 players who can shoot threes and that's it anymore. And there are a number of teams who believe you can't do it with 4. So you're just going up against the limitations of the growth of the WNBA right now. And you're doing that with Alyssa Thomas. You're certainly doing that with wherever Brittany Griner ends up. And BG is a Hall of Famer. She is an inner circle, first ballot Hall of Famer after she retires. But she is not a stretch 5 in any real sense of the word. And so the biggest indication that Alyssa Thomas makes a fit in Phoenix comes with the idea that you couldn't have AT and BG on the floor at the same time. It just wouldn't make sense from an offensive standpoint. It definitely doesn't make sense from a 2025 WNBA standpoint. So where will BG end up? That's going to be fascinating. There is so much more to talk about. Again, news that we had at the top. Multiple lead sources have heard, not finalized, but the framework of the deal, Natasha Cloud, Rebecca Allen, the number 12 pick from Phoenix, going to Connecticut in exchange for Alyssa Thomas and Ty Harris would be coming to Phoenix. The trade first reported by the great Alexa Philippou of ESPN, that it was happening with AT. I'm Howard Megdal. We're going to be doing a lot of these together. This is Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.